Let's go.
My name is Matthias.
My name's Jeff. Welcome to Versus Live.
Why write poetry?
Poem is done. Like, what was the point here? I also don't know where this poem is going.
Poetry's very love-hate.
The worst possible thing is them just saying no.
I'm actually glad I checked that because we were definitely on the wrong mic. Good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Versus Live.
Yeah.
Presented here at Third Way Cafe. Thanks to Third Way for having us.
Third
My
Way.
name is Jeff. I'm joined here by
Matthias.
yes. We are here to
Yes.
discuss, as always, all things poetry, but specifically, well, maybe not your poems. We're going to be taking a look at Twitter poems today.
So they could be your poems if you're on Twitter.
Yeah. So
and
if
you wrote poems on Twitter.
if you wrote poems today and published them on Twitter, there is a chance
There's a chance we're
that
gonna
we found you, and we're gonna
There's a
look at your work.
Yeah.
And judge you.
Will we be disappointed? Find out soon. Very soon.
Have you ever just like scoured Twitter just for poems?
No. I think my Twitter scouring is typically a lot more petty than man, let me look at poems. Although maybe
Speaking of petty, let's see how petty these poems. I have no idea what to expect. I have not read these poems. I just kind of found them. I saw, hey, these are kind of short enough that we can kind of cover them in a stream. So
let us know. Are you a poet that posts things on Twitter, like or just like on any social media site?
does
Like,
this
let us
describe
know.
you? Is this you?
Are you this person?
Who is doing this? Who is writing
Are
these
you
things?
the person that posts things on Twitter?
Who are you writing these for?
Are you the person that posts insightful things on Twitter and IG? Are you that guy? You're the only one.
I don't know, but I'll clap that up if you're doing that. Let's put that work in. Put that work in.
Yeah.
All right, let's
Make the world a better place.
without further ado, here's our first Twitter poem by Anthony Reed. And I kind of saw about it, just like a quick note. I also took these on Twitter because I'm like, all right, you're posting them on a public social media platform, so this is fair game, right? I mean, you literally put it there. It's like Anthony.
To be read.
If you're enjoying this work, you can find Anthony. Ants are red. Sared? Ants are red. Ants are red. Ants ard.
I choose ants a red. That's my choice.
I'll choose ants are red. All right. I guess we should read it. Is that how we do this?
We should.
I'll read this one. Let's read the next one. No titles. Sadness tinged with celebration, I am letting go. Change in one's direction, fear of getting low. I could feel broken-hearted, shadow disappear. Now it's time to savor on horizon. I have a banner reading. Dramatic pause, dramatic pause, dramatic pause. Horizon clear. Now it's time to savor on horizon clear. Yeah, let's clap that up for poems. Give it up for poems and poetry.
Good.
Okay. Hey, I have a high school friend. What's up, Troy? Good to
It's
see you.
Troy.
That's it.
Yeah.
I have not seen that profile picture. Is that a? There's an animal in there.
It's a dolphin.
Is it dolphin? I hope it's.
I don't know what that is.
All right. You're safe. I hope.
I mean, he posted the profile picture. What if the whale posted? Like, I don't know.
Last thing I saw.
Times.
Yes, grade school friend from kindergarten. Long time.
Wait, from only like kindergarten, like,
and
or is it
elementary
like
school
back
and
from
like high
kindergarten
school?
through?
Like
Okay.
yeah.
I was about to say, like, if it was like just kindergarten and then like
No.
that's where you left it.
No, I don't. I imagine there were people in kindergarten that were there. I've forgotten. We don't. We don't.
I have
Anyway,
forgotten.
there's a poem on this. Initial thoughts, kind of things that are standing out to you.
It's a nice, clear, clean 4-stanza situation.
Got some tercets, tercets,
yeah.
Got some rhyme scheme.
We do got some rhyme scheme. I do like them. Sadness tinged with celebration.
I like the word tinge. That's a nice. That was an unexpected. I think out of this whole poem, although savor I would also throw in there. I think tinge was probably the most unexpected word there, which I like. Fan of that. Again, just one of the things I remember just from attending Kowloon was they said that with poems, every poem needs to have something strange, something weird in it. Good poems have something weird going on. So there's also over the weekend we did I was leading a kind of reading analysis workshop.
One of the things talk about. So what is it called?
It's called Fine Print.
Fine Print.
Fine Print. We meet on second Sundays in the month through June. At the Street Light Guild in Columbus. One of the things we spent some time talking about is just kind of like emotional language, emotional pH. Every word has some sort of emotional value. Like it's rare that you have a word that's just like 100% neutral, just like a pH 7. You know what I mean? Something, it's always going to be a little acidic or it's going to be a little more base. So just when you're looking at language, what sort of emotional values you're getting. So, and there's different ways to do it. So this poem's going a lot more direct, just being like sadness. Okay, so obviously leaning more towards the sad emotion, but also the celebration aspect. I mean, celebration, I guess you could argue, is a little bit more abstract because it's not just saying happy, saying celebration, but in general, we're seeing very direct emotional language. We see sadness, we see fear, we see brokenhearted, and then savor. I do like that. Now it's time to savor. I do like that. Also, British English spelling. Whatever that does for you. Okay. Troy mentioned at the end is hopeful. And I would agree with that. Yeah. So one thing is, I would definitely not say that this poem is flat. I think there is a lot of kind of emotional layers going on.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so I don't think it's flat either. I do think it's like almost using a kind of like a lot of ethereal almost, you can kind of attach these emotions to whatever the reader maybe is going through at the time, whatever the reader is, processing, and there might be something specific for the author, but it's ambiguous enough in the language to, be like, it's typically like, the human condition, like you're gonna have spaces in your life where you're up or you're down, but there's maybe this horizon of the horizon's clear. Maybe there's like this other thing that's happening on the other end. So I mean, I think you could look at it maybe as like a drawback. There's like not like something grounding you in something specific, but it's also possible that you can look at it like, well, it's kind of everything is kind of like a placeholder for whatever you want to put onto this poem.
I think that universality of it is also probably and you hinted at this, it's also the part that can make this poem a little bit more difficult to enter in the sense that there's not a lot of specifics going on, right? Like, I don't know what's causing the sadness exactly. I don't know what's causing the celebration. I don't know what's causing. I don't even know what's leading the speaker to let go that we see in the first stanza there. I don't know why there's a fear of getting low. Like, I think a lot of times, like, when you have poems, people make assertions. Like, for instance, or probably an easy example is like sometimes in a poem, people will say the word like mom or like mother.
Yeah.
With the intention of being like, everyone has a mom, everyone knows what a mom is. So they'll bring that same projection that I have onto moms onto themselves. So it's like a universal thing. But it's actually kind of problematic because, some people have very problematic relationships with their moms. Some people may not have ever even known their mom. Some people, there's so many different layers. And some people will have a very positive relationship with their mother. So it's those sorts of aspects, I think, really kind of need to be explored in a poem. We can't assume that the reader is going to have the same associations with a word or an image that we do.
Yeah, but it's also, and I definitely agree with you there. Do you think that there might be something to, and I don't know if Anthony Reed is a
watching
person
this
is standing behind us right now. I don't know if they're publishing in other platforms or publishing through other funnels. But do you think that there might be something to like the platform that it's being, because I don't know if this
sure.
I don't know if it exists somewhere else, but I would think like when it comes to publishing it on Twitter, one of the things that I would probably kind of immediately register is what a lot of people do on Twitter, which it can be good or bad. You kind of however you're looking at it, or whatever the intended use is. But a lot of people, the thing that they're attempting to do is they're attempting to make things kind of universal and not kind of pick a side, so to speak, but to sound like they're picking a side, or to sound like they're being something, like being specific. But then you get everybody in the room is like, oh yeah, you agree with me, you agree, because they could have agreed with anybody. Right. So which is just to say that, that's not a direct correlation, but it's just to say that in something like this where you have maybe, I think, the ability to kind of not be incredibly specific. You kind of are just giving the feeling, which I think a lot of times is kind of what Twitter is doing. Maybe you're saying, hey, this is the feeling. How many people can kind of generally resonate with this? And then somebody might like quote tweet it with like maybe something specific. Maybe this describes insert this event or insert this event. So it might be something to the platform in the venue that the poem is being displayed.
That'll be definitely something we take a look at and see how other poets are using Twitter as a platform. So you're saying that you're feeling it kind of increases the accessibility, like for people to kind of enter it.
Yeah, I mean,
on Twitter?
in a way, I think that, I mean, if the writer gets like more specific, maybe that is where people can kind of allow themselves to kind of get off of the train, so to speak, where they're like, okay, I'm on the path with you right here, but then you get something specific about your experience, and you're like, okay, well that's not me, you know what I mean, and like, or that's not necessarily applying to me, or anything like that. So that, I think that can be, I think, as a tool, if you're, again, bringing it back to it being used on Twitter as a tool, it's like maybe that's their intention. Maybe their intention is to not really give somebody the space to kind of get off the train and be like, well, that's not me. That's not kind of where I place. Because again, these are all kind of very typical. If you're any discernible age to really be probably in taking this in, because you're on Twitter, like, so it's like, if you're at that point, you probably have went through some form or fashion of all these emotions, but in your own way and in your own trajectory. And even if you haven't really thought about it before, like this kind of poem can make you think like, hey man, like, yeah, the trajectory of my life in this space or what have you, like, this is kind of like this poem. And so yeah, I think it's, again, whether it's good or bad, like, I'll leave that up to like individual readers, I suppose. Like, I think if we're talking about on an individual basis, like, there's probably a more potent delivery mechanism for like individuals to that, because I mean, I think the more specific and the more kind of detailed you can be about specific experiences and kind of relating things through something specific as opposed to being general, I generally do think that is better. But I think for something like Twitter, where I think that specificity will perhaps cut some people that might repost, might retweet, you know what I'm saying? They might cut people out of that space because they're like, I'm retweeting this because, oh, this reminds me of me, me at this age, or me at this age. It's like, so it could be kind of a hodgepodge of like, not just the poem, but also the delivery method for the poem.
That's interesting what you said about the accessibility, because I find it's maybe it's just because I don't that just mentioning audiences is interesting, and I would be kind of curious to see if this same poem with like specifics and things like that, I find that would be a lot easier to enter, because like, yeah, I mean, I may not have those experiences, but your reader, I think the mind just kind of naturally pulls to similar experiences. Like, oh yeah, like maybe I didn't have that specific experience of like, watching like an animal get hit by a car or something like that, but I can put myself in similar situations and kind of imagine that versus just saying, oh, sadness. It's like, well, okay, like I don't. That could be a million things.
I think you're right. That's the thing. Like you're right on the individual level. So I think that if this were an open mic, I would approach it like I would probably have a much different kind of, because it's like if I'm thinking about it as far as like a poem for an open mic, I don't necessarily. Open mics are important, are really, really important, but I don't necessarily regard it like open mics like that's where your poem, that's like the final stage where your poem, that's where your poem graduates and then like it's over. So
like life.
Yeah. So I think that I might have a different or a critique that could be added in that space, but it's almost like greeting cards, like,
it has a greeting card kind of feel.
Yeah, right. So it's like for like a greeting card, like the mechanism shouldn't be like, remember where we met on Broad and Long, where we went to that donut shop and you got the like.
I would actually much prefer that, but I understand the argument you're making.
But do you see how like it gives in that instance? It's like it's giving a probably more interesting story, that like a more interesting story, a more interesting like pathway through like language, and something that's like, oh, it's much more catching, that it's like I don't know what I would use this for if I'm buying a greeting card, or if I'm getting this for somebody, like, happy 20th birthday or something like that, like, oh, this thing might not apply. And I think that's kind of the funnel that Twitter is when you're creating poems, or when you're making poems maybe for Twitter. It's like, if I get too hyper specific, like maybe there is a community that would just appreciate the good poems, and I'm sure there is, but I would guess that's somewhat similar to, I think if you wrote like a really good poem and you go to an open mic, and like people at the open mic that can appreciate your poem, they might be like, I really, really like your poem. But then there's always going to be people that write super general, broad swathing, maybe just like, empowerment. They might use all like the same 5 words in their poem that everybody that is, with that kind of branding can kind of recognize, and they'll get all the claps and, oh my gosh, you were so inspiring. But you kind of recognize like these are really generic kind of, euphemisms that you're using throughout your poem that like, okay, everybody uses, but for some reason people really rock with it, and it resonates. So it's like, it's kind of like that. It's like yes, you're right. I would think when we might be having a conversation about a better quality poem to us, or what generally might be considered like a better quality poem to people, but I would also think that like there is something to the mechanism that is Twitter and what you're doing when you're posting poems on Twitter. Like what is the thing that you're doing? Are you looking to, get the people that might just appreciate your poem, what I mean, which I'm sure there is some, or are you like, okay, this is kind of like a general kind of catch-all, and this is something that this person might not be a person that's like, oh man, I'm a poetry enthusiast, but they're just like a regular civilian, so to speak, and they're like, oh, like this is kind of inspiring, and like I'm sure that is much more plentiful on the app than the other one.
For the poem itself, I think it's interesting. Sadness tinged with celebration. That's to me, that's putting more emphasis on the sad. There's more sadness than celebrating, right? Because if you switch that, then that makes it sound happier, right? If you said celebration tinged with sadness.
Yeah.
I am letting go, change in one's. I'm imagining that break. I'm letting go. Break. change in one's direction. I'm guessing I'm supposed to separate the first stanza from the second. So that doesn't really read right. I'm letting go, change in one's. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm. It's kind of odd because it feels like in the first stanza we're referring to the writer is saying, sadness, tinged with celebration, I am letting go. And then in the second stanza, it's like change in one's direction. Like,
now we're general.
Now we're
kind of
going out, but then we go back to the third stanza was, I could feel brokenhearted, shadow disappear.
Yeah, those last two stanzas I find really like, I could feel, but I don't, because now it's time to savor. Right? That's how kind of I'm interpreting those last. I could feel this, but I'm not going to, because now it's time to savor. Although savor what exactly?
Yeah, I think. I mean, and maybe I could feel brokenhearted. Shadow disappear.
That's also really interesting with shadow. You kind of, I feel like the expectation would be shadows and very general, like that shadow, but makes it seem like it's there's one specific element of darkness here.
Yeah.
Whether it's the one specific event or one specific person causing this or whatever. I thought that was interesting. I also don't know. I think one of the big questions I have is it's like they could feel this way, but they don't. Why? I don't have enough understanding of the motivations here. Like, I don't have enough understanding of motivation of like why they're letting go, why they're choosing not to feel broken hearted, and what is causing them to be like, you know what? No, I need to like, again, savor this moment.
Yeah, but it's also I'm not entirely sold that they're saying no, they're not going to feel that way. I hear in the first part, I could feel brokenhearted. I could feel brokenhearted, and then it feels like an invocation, like shadow disappear.
Yeah, I'm not.
So
I could see it as like they're almost trying to like convince themselves, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know that it's saying they don't as much as they're saying that they would maybe be trying to like maybe the end of this poem is them trying to invoke that. You know what I mean? Them trying to say, hey, don't
make it say
don't
it, make
feel
it say
this despair. Don't feel this brokenhearted.
Yeah, but I think I definitely get that sense too, where it's like, hey, I'm saying these things, almost like fake it till you make it, like kind of just like I'm saying these things and hoping that I actually believe them.
As next tweet is just like it didn't work.
Yeah. Do you think that the one last thing, then we'll move on to the next one. How do you like the form of this? Like, first it's short, very short lines, a little bit of rhyme. Think it's helping, hurting, reinforcing?
I think, and again, I think I'll probably kind of bring this back to again like what Twitter is and kind of the format for Twitter. I think that I don't say most people, I think a lot of people, if they're not avid poetry readers and they're not digging into like the different authors that maybe you wouldn't just get on a kind of a cursory search, like this is what you're looking at when you're looking at poems. You know what I mean? Like if this was like a Hallmark poem, like this would be, you know what I mean? So it's like I think like the format of it kind of looks as if either he's in the writers intentionally trying to put it into a format that they typically didn't digest poems in, or like that's how he digests poems, and so that's how he knows how to generate poems. So.
One thing I think is interesting a lot of times when you see three, not just anything you said, when you see three lines, that it kind of implies a little bit of an unbalance, but then at the same time, It is very structured because it's also very regular. So you kind of have these like interesting tensions of like the unbalancedness of the three stanzas. Also that third stanza kind of interesting too, just because that shadow disappear line. It's only 2 words, but it's your longest line of the like visually, and it's also paired with your shortest line visually with the I could feel. So having that together in one stanza, especially towards the bottom of the poem. Like there's kind of like this tension between control versus lack of control that to me is kind of coming across with the current form, which I think is reinforcing.
You don't think they could have been like, oh, let me kind of center these the words on the page, and then it just that's how it's centered.
I mean,
I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's not.
But I mean, it's left justified though. I mean, it's left aligned.
Yeah, no, but I agree. But like, so like you could put the margin at, straight on the left, and then, do whatever on the right, but then you just
I can only work with what I have. I can only work with what I have here. All right. Well, anyways,
I know Microsoft Word. I've been there before.
Anthony, we found your poem, and we had thoughts.
Thanks, Anthony.
And that was
we
that.
Really appreciate you.
That was the thoughts. And you guys, if you're watching this, you can let us know what your thoughts are of that piece.
Let us know.
Let's take a look at another one. We got here. It's gonna block our face. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This from Yossarian.
Okay.
Do you want to read this one for us?
Yeah. From Yossarian in facsimile.
Yes.
There we go. Is this really 4 hours ago, or is this?
It was 4 hours. It was today. Yeah,
it was 4 hours ago
whenever I pulled it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dear lady on the bus, please don't forget the bus strike tomorrow.
I wonder if he's based in the UK. I know that they're having public transit strikes. Although I guess it's more with the trains, I thought. Dear lady on the bus, please don't forget the bus strike tomorrow.
The irony, maybe.
What are your thoughts? Yeah, first reactions.
This is like the irony. Is like, I mean, unless he's speaking from a point of like maybe watching the bus. In my head, I'm thinking of him sitting on the bus.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was imagining the speaker and the lady were both on the bus at the same time.
And then him.
That's what I first think.
Don't forget the bus strike tomorrow. Now that is funny. I don't know if that's supposed to be funny, but that's kind of a funny, like, I can imagine like a skit where you're like, we're striking the bus tomorrow, not today. I got a place to go.
I think there's so many ways you could take that. Like, you could definitely see it as kind of like a light-hearted kind of thing, but there's also like some implications here as well. Like, there's a reason that the speaker feels compelled to say this to the lady. Like, if whatever situation, like she's someone that really, really depends on the bus. Like, you always see her on the bus. Maybe she seems like forgetful or something like that, and you're like worried about her to be like, oh no, she's not going to remember. There's also kind of that sense of like, kind of like this, like the ethics of like, for instance, like photography. Like, if you're a photographer and like you see something potentially life-threatening happening to someone else, and you're there with the camera just shooting it, just kind of like the ethical implications of that. Like, there was that famous picture of that one person on the subway however many years ago, and like the car was coming, and there obviously was not enough time for that person to get off the tracks. Like, the train is literally about to hit the person. And someone took the picture, and it's like, I mean, yeah, it's a very, obviously very striking picture, but it also calls into mind, like, is it okay to take that picture? Like, is it like, what is as your role as a photographer? Are you complicit? What was the person
doing on the tracks?
They'd fallen or something on the. We don't. I mean, all we have is the picture. Always, so we don't know the whole story behind the picture. We just know that this person is about to like.
There's some photographer that was just like, I really want to get this picture.
But that's also kind of the sense. Hopefully the stakes are not as large here, but like the sense here, like so we have this poem, but it's like, Well, did they tell the person in real life? Did they remind them in real life, or is just kind of something that like you're kind of just reflecting to yourself?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that if the situation is that he's on the bus with her and he's reminding her, because I would almost be like, if you were the bus strikes, and I would imagine if he's not in our country, like if you look back, imagine the bus strikes in our country. Like, okay, if he saw somebody, I was like, okay, we're striking. Don't forget that we're striking tomorrow. Like that sounds like maybe not a warning, but a hope that you have a comrade in this person. You know what I mean?
That's the kind of the question I have is like, he kind of brings on into mind like just like narrators and how much you can trust them. Is there such thing as like a reliable narrator? Like how am I supposed to feel about this speaker? Am I supposed to be like, oh, look at them with their good intentions? But how good are these actual intent? Did they actually do the thing? Is this actually said in a way that's like compassionate, or is this like
a warning?
It could be. It could be a warning. It could be annoyance. Like, oh my god, like please don't forget. Like, oh my gosh, we told you 20 times, lady. Like, come on. So there's so many questions here, which I like. I think it's a short piece, but I think there's a lot of complications. One of the things that I think this piece is doing that the previous one wasn't is I really like the sense of place. I feel very grounded. And there's not even necessarily a whole lot of setting though, but that first line, again, I felt like I was on the bus. And I felt that sense of like I'm in a place where, again, my world is about to shift in some way, in the sense that there's going to be this bus strike that's looming.
Yeah.
And in the scheme of things, that might not be like completely like world changing or something like that, but it
some stakes that aren't. It's a very short poem, a quick 3-line poem. So it in 3 lines, it gives you stakes. It gives you 2 subjects or it gives you, I guess, 1 subject and 1 narrator. So 1 subject, narrator, and stakes. And not only stakes for the general populace, because we're talking about a bus strike, but it also gives you stakes as far as the relationship between the narrator and the subject.
Yeah. And also, like, again, there's not a lot of words here, but the words that are chosen, there is a lot of kind of emotional kind of context. Again, like dear lady, like the dear. It's not like hey lady on the bus. It's dear lady on the bus, like dear. Again, kind of on its face value seems compassionate. Please, that kind of sense. It could have just said don't forget. But no, it's please don't forget. So a little bit more compassion. And then like bus strike. I mean, yeah, bus strike is the thing, but the word strike is also there's a physicality to that I really like. A heaviness.
I really like the physicality.
And then even like tomorrow, in the sense of, because it's one thing if it's the dear lady on the bus, please don't forget the bus strike, versus that tomorrow. Like I think kind of. It's one of those things that the storm is coming and you can see the storm, but the storm's also not here yet. So that sense of like kind of foreboding, I like a lot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's a lot here.
Yeah, I also like don't with that apostrophe. Their only punctuation is that apostrophe there, like right in the middle. I find interesting aesthetically. That's just me.
That apostrophe is really doing it for me.
It's doing the work. I like this. I'm not gonna lie, I like that one.
It's good.
How are you feeling about these poems so far?
I like them. I think that poem was doing something maybe different for maybe like a different Twitter sphere. I don't think I don't think the things that are happening in that poem are necessarily things that are incredibly poignant. Poignant may be the wrong word, but like they have no maybe kind of direct bearing to like this region. As far as like there's not a bus strike that I know of that's happening tomorrow, like for like Dakota or something like that.
In Europe,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm talking like for here, like so, so. I think that like maybe that has some direct application for their end, which is also it's kind of doing something similar to what our first poem was doing, as far as, or I'm sorry, not similar. It's doing the opposite, but it's having maybe I would say probably the same effect. So it's doing something different, which is it's being more specific. It's giving you direct stakes and personhood inside of the poem, but then it's also I would imagine if you're in that region and you know about this bus strike and not only that, but if this bus strike has some particular heavy relevance to your day to day, then it's like, oh yeah, that's like relevant to me. So, yeah.
Gonna bring up another one.
Let's bring it up.
I'll read this one from Tonka Daily. I've not written any Tonkas. I should write some Tonkas. Anyways, untitled again. A slight wind shakes the trees above us. All my fights with her start from disagreements I wind up forgetting.
What if it's I wind up forgetting?
Well, that's I think that's the very first thing that kind of stands out to me is just that kind of that wordplay. I'm imagining that's intentional between wind and wind, which I do like. What if it's not like a slight wind shakes the trees? I mean, that would also shake trees.
Fair enough.
I'd like slight. I think that just that kind of sense of instability in those first two lines, because again, it's not taking much for everything to kind of be affected or impacted. That's kind of what I'm getting from that first part there.
So I think it's kind of odd because, like, I think when I read the fullness of the poem and I'm thinking, okay, we have two subjects, the writer and whoever her is,
right,
and then the setting, which is we see trees being shaken above them by a slight wind, and they are fighting, or maybe the statement that they do fight, and the start of these fights or disagreements, they like maybe they're menial, maybe
that's
they're
kind
like
of
so menial that
I feel like it's a reference back to the first line, like to start from disagreements. The slight wind is like a minor thing that then builds up into. We don't see the wind building up to a storm necessarily, but I feel like there's kind of that sense, kind of like an undercurrent, like something small having an impact on something big.
Yeah, and it might disturb it for a moment, but the tree's still standing, so like, it ends up forgetting, or you end up forgetting.
Which also, that last line I find really interesting too, because it can be interpreted so many ways. Like it'd be all my fights with her start from disagreements I wind up forgetting. Like I forget the disagreements, but it could also be the slight wind shakes the trees and then it's gone. All my fights with her start from disagreements and then the fight's gone and then you wind up forgetting the fight. Like I like that last line because I think it's I think there's different. You could see it as, especially because there's no punctuation, so you can view it as that last line being like you forget everything. Or you could view it as the disagreements that you forget. And that's causing the fight.
Well, if this message is going out to my wife at home, I forget nothing.
Besides did not write this poem, it was me. Yeah, I really like that last line. I think the no punctuation is doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
I like the opening two lines is super grounding. Just giving us a place, especially after that, to immediately follow that with the abstraction of the fights. It makes it a lot easier. This I like the staging and the progression. I think it really helps. Because if you started just with the fights, like if this poem were just like all, like I feel like if this poem were like the very first poem we looked at, it would just be like all my fights with her start from disagreements I wanted to forget it or something like that. Like I feel like the first poem would have just done that. It wouldn't have done the like the slight wind shakes the trees above us kind of sense.
It might be a slight wind. I wind up forgetting.
I could, yeah. I mean, nature imagery. I think nature imagery is always something that people can connect to immediately. Like in a poem, if you're stuck, good nature image is always one way to try to dig yourself out, in my opinion.
And then a river was flowing.
I mean,
what?
People just have
about Arby's.
People have immediate. What? There's no meat in this river.
We have like the meat.
People just have these immediate connections with nature. Do you take the us as being the same as the speaker and the her?
Yeah. What other interpretation would you?
I mean, I was just wondering.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I do, but I didn't. I don't know that.
Sorry, we're back. You don't see any other option?
No. What do you? Do you see any other option here?
I mean, us and things like that. There's always kind of like that universal aspect too, in a way. It could be, but I think for the sake of this poem, it does seem mostly the speaker and the her.
Okay.
Also, another thing I like is just the sense of we've been talking a lot about emotion. Like all my fights with her. I mean, that's very kind of the totality of that. Start from disagreements. I wind up forget. Like there's almost a sense of like culpability or like blame that the speaker is kind of assigning to themselves. Although we don't even really know how the speaker feels about the fights.
I think you might, because I think that. I mean, I guess maybe there might be two ways to think about it, but I'm like the way that I'm interpreting it is, all the fights that happen are starting with disagreements that were small enough or slight enough that in the grand scheme I can forget.
No. Other things from this one?
I think we had a good, like, every line started with the AS, and then I.
And then to break up with the... That's interesting. So you had the pair, and then you have the singular, which is the I.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. I like this poem.
It's nice.
Feeling that. Very, very... It was a pleasant to read. Let me try to do one more. What do you say?
Let's do it.
I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to flash them on the screen really quick. And you'll just have to decide by looking at them very, very briefly. You ready?
I love this game that I've never played before.
There's that. There's that. And there's this.
Third one.
You want to feel that frailty by Quiet Storm.
Mad Queen Storm.
Those crescents in the star. Can you read this for us?
Okay. I feel the frailty of me like a cold breath at times, the fundamental force that is death's reminder. Time has tipped the balance now.
All right.
That feels like really, I'm gonna read it in an epic voice.
Please.
I feel the frailty of me like a cold breath at times, the fundamental force. That is death's reminder. Time has tipped the balance now.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, that felt much more. Yeah, there we go. It also maybe sad violin. I had to stare deeply into the camera.
Unfortunately, you were blocked. You can do it. Let's do that again. Hang on. Let's.
And scene. Wow, that was impactful.
Initial thoughts. Things that are jumping out at you.
Man, the fundamental force.
That is feels like a math term.
The fundamental force. Everything the light touches. Yeah, no, that's this poem feels fairly intense, and I feel like it gives like some like the stakes feel really high at time has tipped the balance now.
I mean, even in the beginning, the first line, I feel the frailty of me. Oh my, like there's a.
This is when Vader lost the fight to Obi-Wan, and then now he has to be put inside of the suit. And I feel the frailty of me, like a cold breath at times.
The fundamental force.
The fundamental force. It's the fundamental force.
Time has tipped the balance now.
Time has tipped the balance now, Luke.
Yeah, I can see. In the parallel universe, these are lines stolen from Darth Vader.
Absolutely.
It's a Cento.
I kind of want to like read it in Yoda, but I feel like Yoda wouldn't.
No,
read this, we're not going to do that. IP will grow untouched.
Poem itself.
I think it feels to me fairly similar to the first poem, but just like dire. You know what I'm saying? It's like the first poem felt like sadness, kind of almost opening its cocoon into possibilities.
There were elements of happiness in that first one, but this is just we are just down.
The time has tipped the balance now, and I feel like whenever time tips balances, it's not for the good.
Yeah, it's definitely that emotional roller coaster. Yeah, I don't know how to read that line. Again, no punctuation, so I'm not entirely sure how to read that. That means the fundamental force, or did that means
feels real midlife crisis to you, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple possibilities what that could potentially be. And I think that ambiguity can work in poems, but I think in this case having more specificity would have been helpful. I'm also not the at times for me in that second line is really kind of weakening the impact of the line or the image. Like I feel the frailty of me like a cold breath to me is a little bit more striking than I feel the frailty to me like a cold breath at times.
I agree.
But then again, there's no punctuation, so that at times actually could be
for like a cold breath.
The next part
at times, the fundamental.
Yeah,
but
that doesn't right. That doesn't.
That makes the fundamental force line, I think, seem weaker. And I would really, really, really like to read the fundamental force line exactly like the fundamental force. Like that, I think is really striking and powerful.
I'd also maybe consider getting rid of that because to me it's too ambiguous. The fundamental force is death's reminder. Like to me, that's a lot more striking.
Now read it like Mike Tyson would read it.
The fundamental force.
The fundamental. Death's reminder.
Sorry, Mike. Please,
that would be. Oh my god! Because like, can you imagine? Like, that's like what he says. Like in the pre-fight interview.
Okay.
Like, go. You gotta pull the. No, now you gotta pull the poem. I feel the frailty of me, like a cold breath at times. The fundamental force. That is death's reminder. Time has tipped the balance. It's like I could like if like this is like the pre-read, like I would like I quit the fight immediately. It's like, okay, clearly whatever this guy, he's had some wild stuff in those pre-fight interviews, but yeah. Time has tipped the balance now.
I'm guessing Quiet Storm is not Mike Tyson.
I
But
mean,
if you are, if Mike Tyson, if you are mad, if you are mad Queen Storm, that is you.
I went under the pseudonym for a reason, guys. No, I want to read every poem like
this. This is our last one. This is definitely our last one.
No, I don't mean like today. I mean for the rest of my life. The rest of the poems that I read for the rest of my life, in my head, I might read it regular in front of people, but in my head, it's Mike Tyson that's saying the poem.
There's these little moments that I think are, I think this could be polished even more, removing a couple things, and would really just kind of allow the images to stand out even more strikingly. Again, removing the at times, removing the that.
It feels like almost like a goth aesthetic. You know what I mean? It's almost like,
yeah,
like, you know how like you might have somebody that has like a lot of things that you might associate with like goth things, but like what I don't know what in specific you're talking about, like what in specific you're mad about, where the angst is coming from specifically.
It's just darkness.
Yeah.
Everything.
That is death's reminder, like, because invoking death, I think in any work or structure is going to invoke some kind of, like, typically is going to evoke some kind of darkness, especially if you didn't preclude it with anything necessarily like sunshiny or hopeful, or maybe any kind of like, this is what I think happens when you die, or what you know, whatever. It's like, and also like, you know, cold breath, and then time tipping the balances. Again, you don't see that referenced as a positive,
right? Yeah, definitely like negative, dark tones here. Probably the thing that grosses me the most is the cold breath. Like, I can feel that. I like that. Yeah. And I kind of wanted more of that. Fundamental force, like for every concrete element that cold breath does, fundamental force immediately takes me out, which isn't a bad thing, but I'm never grounded again. You know, the cold breath grounded me, and then the fundamental force, I'm leaning abstraction. That is death's reminder. Again, I'm not even entirely sure. I don't know what fundamental force is, so that entirely. And that is also,
but it invokes like a really kind of almost grandiose, and it's like basic.
Yeah, very powerful.
You know what I mean?
But very powerful and things, but also there's this sense of the inability to comprehend what it is at the same time.
Yeah.
And then
you can't wrap your arms around the concept.
Yeah. And it only continues from there. So like that is death's reminder, because that's relying on the previous line, in the way I'm reading it. And so, like, if that were something more concrete, that would have been very helpful for me. Like, what is the specific thing that is death that becomes the reminder of death? And then time has tipped the balance. I mean, the poem feels it doesn't feel finished to me. Time has tipped, especially that now kind of implies to me that there's more information that's going to be coming, but instead I'm left with white space.
It feels kind of like, and also again, kind of what Twitter is kind of in reinserting. It's a continuation of a dialogue that people are having from you as a person, and like from like your personality and what have you. So it's like everything that I say on Twitter maybe is a continuation of somebody's compilation of Matt. Like, this is who he is as a person. He's a person who thinks this. So it's like, that seems like, you know, it's kind of couched into a larger scale kind of personality. You know what I mean?
One or two is just like staging would have helped, like just like moving lines around somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, time has tipped the balance now, like a cold breath. I don't know. There's some tricky.
Yeah.
I want to enter it more than I'm being allowed to, and that frustrates me as a reader right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's. I think if I had to wager a guess, it's just like talking about time's effect on a person, on this person, because it's like now
there's a sense of death and time, and like, okay,
I wish you had more time. Name that movie.
But what's I can't tell you.
The Equalizer, Denzel Washington.
I haven't seen it. You can boo me.
No, not The Equalizer. Man on Fire. I'm sorry, not boo me for getting it wrong. You haven't seen Man on Fire? What? I'll boo some more.
Okay, just keep booing. Deserve all the boos.
No, I was waiting for the boo. Wait, there we go.
So weird. We can laugh.
And back to Sad Violence.
This is why you don't get a soundboard.
I'm sorry, Denzel.
Yeah, so there's that. We did that. We looked at some Twitter poems. What are your guys' thoughts on the Twitter poems?
Let us know. Which one was your favorite Twitter poem?
Did you want to do this?
Yes, I wanted to do it. Oh my gosh.
Cool. Let's do this then. Wait, what's that over there?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna take a look. Matthias has some poetry in the wild for us.
Poetry in the wild. Now, okay, so like what I really enjoy about doing poetry in the wild, and what I really enjoy about poetry, because like kind of what we just did with like poetry in the wild, but that was like very. The only reason I would like that's kind of like a detractor from poetry in the wild, because it's like it's these are people that are very intentionally making poems, and I think poetry in the wild a lot of times is about poems that you're finding that like maybe they don't know their poems.
You're telling me that Popeyes doesn't know they're writing poetry?
They're not fully. They're not as self-aware Popeyes quite yet. They're gonna
still reaching their final form.
They're getting there. But we got this pair of poems actually, and one of the things that we do not talk about enough that I think is a really cool facet of like really art is like art that is in direct conversation with other art. And when I say like direct conversation, like maybe like it's almost like a retaliatory, like this art exists, and because this art exists, I have to make art that attacks the art that exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
yeah, sure.
Sometimes I'm like, I just got to make some kind of painting because the Mona Lisa is just not sitting right. Okay, so we have this picture. It's a side by side. So okay, actually, no, this might be fun. So okay, so I'll read the left and you read the right.
Okay.
So the first poem is Drive Through from Popeyes Chicken and a lot of people, they stop at chicken. Okay, but to be very, very clear, it's Popeyes Chicken and biscuits. Please put respect on the biscuits. Drive Through. FYI, people need to eat on Sundays. Yeah, that's just it's like both wholesome and it's true. Like the people do. Like I eat pretty much all Sundays.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I've kind of switched it up. You know, it's making me feel.
How's that working out for you?
Good so far. Really good.
You eat the Lord and Savior?
What was that? Drink them too. I gotta wash them down.
Well, Chick-fil-A responds, "We don't run out of chicken sandwiches. Close Sunday."
Wow. So what do you think? So okay, in my opinion, when we are talking about if we were just talking about like just kind of the direct competition between the two,
there's competition between them.
Oh, I mean, of course, but why wouldn't it? Well, okay, so wait, so who would win? We need
I'll put this way. I find Popeyes to be heavier than Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going for a meal, I'm probably more likely to lean towards Chick-fil-A because I don't always want to go comatose.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. You see, I would probably. It kind of depends on the mood.
Especially if I'm getting a biscuit too. Like I'm getting a chicken and a biscuit. How am I supposed to stay awake?
You're not getting biscuits from Chick-fil-A.
I'm not. No, exactly. But that's the point. But that's the point.
But you're saying if I'm getting chicken and a biscuit, but you can't get biscuits from there. Do they even have biscuits?
No, but that's not your business. So like that's kind of the whole point. Like if I'm going to Popeyes, I'm going to get chicken and I'm going to get a biscuit and I'm also
the red beans and rice
and I'm going to fall asleep.
You're gonna eventually fall asleep either way. Might as well.
Yeah, but I can do Chick-fil-A and not fall asleep, which I appreciate.
It's like Chef is just like driving down the road and then he just takes a bite out of the chicken.
This is just automatic. Does no one else have this problem? EpiPens don't work, people.
I don't know that I necessarily fall. I never thought about it.
The itis is strong, man.
The itis is strong. I know. I enjoy the variety that Popeyes has more because I
appreciate that.
I like a good bowl of red beans and rice. They're fried okra.
I can't do okra, but
you can't do okra.
I'm not. It doesn't. I'm not okra. Maybe I just haven't had good okra. I don't know. But
okay? So that has to be it because okra is solid and it's not available at all locations. But man, the biscuits, the Popeyes biscuits,
they're so bad. I mean, they literally will knock you out, man. It's just butter. It's butter in bread form,
and they understand
it's breaded butter.
They know they're playing all the favorites. It's good stuff. It's a classic. I don't know. That's just me.
It's good. It's like I enjoy it.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. So I'm not talking about as a pragmatic. I have other things to do in my day, so this is what I'm going to get. I'm saying like if you're like this is the meal that I want to eat because I want to enjoy my food.
If I have one meal and I'm like I can only eat this once for the whole year. Am I choosing Chick-fil-A or Popeyes? I'll probably pick Popeyes.
No, there we go. There we go. What is it?
But like, you want to laugh at that?
No, I don't want to laugh at it.
Do you want to question?
No, I have to golf clap it up. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's what I was saying. So yeah, I mean, I might. So if those are the terms, I might agree with you. I might be like, okay, well, depending on what I'm eating, if I have other things that I have to do in this window of time, then probably Chick-fil-A. But if I'm like, okay, I can just, I'm relaxing, I'm chilling out, and I'm just enjoying my food, Popeyes. Okay, so how effective is the messaging for you in either poem? And also you have to think about it as a retaliatory piece. Right. So not just, I mean, think about it in either direction. So if you saw Chick-fil-A drop this poem, and then the next day, or then the day of, you saw Popeyes drop this poem, and then think about it vice versa. Like, whose messaging do you think is better and more potent?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the Chick-fil-A one's probably more striking, but that's also not entirely fair because in general, if you're in an argument, you probably want to have the last word. You know what I mean? Like, I think I would rather respond. Like, if I'm doing a debate with someone, I would rather have them go first. Personally.
Yeah, I mean, so I was in debate, and I think that it kind of depends. And the only reason I would say it kind of depends is because you can do a lot of work to mess somebody up by front running them, by being like, okay, I'm going to get, it's almost like an 8 Mile. Have you seen 8 Mile?
Yes.
Okay, you have seen 8 Mile.
I have.
You've seen 8 Mile, but you haven't seen Man on Fire?
Yes.
Oh, come on, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay. So in 8 Mile, like at the end, and what's his name? B Rabbit in the movie.
I can't remember the names, but yeah, sure.
So in the movie, he goes first, and he essentially gets out all of the negatives about himself in his rap. Like he tells everybody all his business. This is everything about me. And then he talks a little bit about the guy, and then he says, what are you going to say about me that I haven't already said? You know what I mean? And then, which, like, if anybody knows the battle rap circuit or has been to a battle rap or anything like that, that was a terribly inconsistent with like the actual battle rap world, because like the battle raps aren't actual freestyles. So, like, somebody telling Eminem, like, oh, what are you going to say about him? Like, because he knows all your business. And then him thinking, like, oh, I'm just going to put out my, like, that's not, like, a super realistic thing to happen. But I want you just to say that, I don't know, if let's say this happened in reverse order, and I would agree. I would actually agree. I would say that you're right. Like, we don't run out of chicken sandwiches. Because here's the thing, like, if I'm looking at the signs and I'm like, FYI, people need to eat on Sundays, it's like, that doesn't matter if you guys are running out of chicken sandwiches. Like, you know what I mean? If people are going to you and they're like, we really want chicken sandwiches, and like and this was kind of near the height of the time where the chicken sandwiches were incredibly popular. So that also you got to think about, the window of time. This is like 2 summers ago or something like that, when like people were waiting around the block for chicken sandwiches, and the whole conversation was Popeye's chicken sandwiches or Chick-fil-A's chicken sandwiches. And to me, it's like, okay, Chick-fil-A has had a very long-standing tradition of not being open on Sundays, so that's kind of like taking a stab at me for that. It's kind of like,
for our whole business model.
Yeah,
like the whole business is built on this.
Yeah, not only is it built on this, but it's like it's a principle that they uphold, that it's a part of their brand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can't really take a stab at me for that.
Literally part of their sign. Literally part of their sign.
You guys are a place that provides food that runs out of food. Like, but we don't run out of food.
Yeah. So like, it's intentionality versus like, that's a part of our business versus you guys can't even do your business because of your own mistake, because you can't even meet supply. So I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's attacked, but yeah.
So Chick-fil-A won this round.
Yeah.
Although Popeyes won our hearts, they did win that round.
All right. Yeah. Is that the thing?
That was Poetry in the Wild.
Poetry in the Wild, folks.
That was Poetry in the Wild.
Just got wilded.
We're in the wild with the poems.
All right.
What's this red button do? What is that?
I think it's a song, but I can't hear it.
It's a mythical song.
So yeah, there's that. You guys can hear the red button later. we'll do an entire podcast. We'll do a stream, just like practicing the red button, just to see what's on the red button. Yeah.
Now you have to tune in next Tuesday, so you can, if you want to know what the red button does, then
which is when we'll be back.
That is when we'll be
next
back.
Tuesday, more poetry coming at you. Thanks again to Third Way Cafe for hosting us. We do appreciate it. And we'll be back on Tuesday with some more poetry goodness. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Matthias.
And we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.